that. And welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. I hope we have a good time together for the next half hour or so. Just to set the scene for you, I'm broadcasting from my office in Essex, which is, of course, the cultural centre of England. And Dan is driving the presentation in Leeds. The downside is I can't see what he's doing, so he might be showing you his holiday snaps, and we're going to have to go with that, so hopefully a bit of comedy in it as well. I became an IMAS partner. I was looking back, I think it was 2007 when IMAS was first set up, and an awful lot's happened since then. I've had a lot of fun along the way and learned a huge amount as well, and IMAS has been really central to giving me some of those experiences. When I was asked to do this, I thought, well, why me? I'm not currently a chief executive. I'm not applying for HSJ awards, but I hope that what it does is gives me some license to share with you candidly some of the mishaps as well as the successes along the way. Just as a little bit of background, I trained as a mental health nurse in Scotland, worked there for a short time. It was a kind of time where you had to wait on someone retiring or dying before any attractive jobs became available. So I moved to Bedfordshire back in 1990. I had a very quickly career as a mental health nurse over a very short time, became a team manager, and then recognized that if I wanted to broaden my management career and do some more, then I should broaden it to other areas of the NHS. This was back at the time of GP fund holding, and that's when I became a primary care manager. And I think it was around the tender age of about 23. Apologies to anyone who's coming in from Bedfordshire. This is Sandy Health Centre. Sandy Health Centre is famous for its architecture, crowned by the palisade fencing that's across the front of the building. The reason for the palisade fencing, which went up during my time there, is because it became a regular sport at the weekend for people to break in and steal toilet rolls, light bulbs, baby milk formula. Unfortunately, they never made it as far as the pharmacy. But it's a fine old place, Sandy. And at the age of about 23, I found myself in this general manager position, full of confidence and probably arrogance, with a 68 middle-aged woman who knew exactly how to do the jobs and weren't having any of it. So I had a couple of years there where I probably achieved absolutely nothing. I did learn a lot along the way, which was a lot to do with working with people as peers rather than thinking you are in charge of them. And I hopefully made things a little bit better, but I can't say it was one of the successes of my career. So just on reflection, and next slide please, Dan, it's a thought. So you will recognize this in your organizations, but no matter how ambitious that youngest manager is, make sure they're supported to thrive and achieve. It didn't work for me because I didn't get the feedback on my own performance. It nearly ended my management career, and I would have probably gone off and done something lots of fun as well that would have been different, but I'm pleased that I stuck with it. But there is this serious lesson for organizations, I think, here. And had I not been pretty determined and resilient, I probably actually would have given up at that point. So I went back to my comfort zone. I did some mental health management. I was offered the opportunity to close down one of the long-stay hospitals, Knapsbury in Hertfordshire, which is was a real privilege. That went very well. I got headhunted into being a commissioner at a health authority. Back then, commissioning was contract management. No one told you how to do it. On my first day, I was handed a bunch of contracts, and I did some controversial things with them that I probably didn't have the political awareness at that time. So just a thought on that commissioning arena, might be worth thinking about what are the real commissioning skills and how do we get them into people, particularly when they're new to that kind of role. After that, I think I was on my third or fourth reorganisation in the NHS at that time. I did some work in Pentonville Prison, operational turnaround stuff. I'm in their healthcare wing. So very proud that my daughter can say when she was born, Dad was in prison. And right about that time, they were setting up strategic health authorities, and there was one place pretty close to home, which was Essex. I became head of modernisation at Essex, met some really impressive and bright people. I quickly became head of performance and then director of performance across the whole of the east of England. So that's it. You made it. You got to regional office, and there was some really good stuff that we achieved there. And I look back on that period with some real affection, and that might not be popular to say in today's slightly different NHS culture. So what did I learn at the Strategic Health Authority? Well, great network of people, precise and concise information, holding chief executives to account, and making things better. What I recognize on reflection is some of the unpopular style and what was rated as the fastest improving strategic health authority in the country. That unpopular style doesn't work now. And candidly, coming back to the East of England very recently, one of the things that I'm having to do and work really hard on is to try and persuade some of the people who were around back then that my style is adaptable and that I can work in a very different way than what was expected of me back then in that job. So the lesson from there is style changes as well as content, and recognize that that's happening, be adaptable, change with it. So after telling everybody off about their A&E performance every winter for 5 years, I decided, and in conversation with IMAS as well, that what I wanted to do was to go and work in an acute hospital myself for my own sensibility and credibility. It felt just the right thing to do. So here's one of the acute hospitals that I worked in. I did a number of chief operating officer jobs in those around the east of England and Northamptonshire. And I had a great time, learned an awful lot around clinical leadership in particular, and the power of particularly those clinical directors, which I took into other arenas very successfully after it. One of the things and the crystallizing moment for me was when I was in the dentist chair having root canal work, and my chief executive was repeatedly dialing my mobile number and telling me how many ambulances were queuing. I thought, I've had enough, and it's time to go and do something different. So a bit of a thought on acute hospitals. So first of all, the old cliche, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. Yeah, perhaps it does. What it taught me was absolutely on the spot, good decision making, and lots of lessons that I've taken into other organisations. However, my own view, and this might be part about my own resilience and energy, which I think is pretty high, I think those jobs are probably for 2 years, 2 winters at most, and things are a bit tougher than they were back then. My proud claim to fame is having made A&E performance #1 in England in 3 consecutive hospitals. That's about getting people to work together in an energised and way that really gets the best out of everyone, from your healthcare assistant to A&E consultants. And it's a whole hospital game. It really, really is high energy, long hours stuff, and many of you on the call may have been in that position. One of the things that I'm considering is going back into that arena, but as an interim, because I think I could do a great job for a few months, but absolutely it's time limited. So slightly left field after that, and taken the directions from the clinical directors that I'd met in an acute hospital. One of these headhunters rang me up and said, there's a chief operating officer job going in a mental health trust. Would you be interested in doing it as an interim? Which, again, I did through IMAS. That was a really fantastic experience. So you come with the fast decision-making that you learn in an acute hospital, come with a can-do attitude and an energy that, frankly, is sometimes not what's usual in a mental health trust. I met a fantastic chief executive called Maria Kane. Very pleased to see Maria was awarded her OBE in the last Queen's Birthday Honours. Absolutely deserving of it. Maria's style was to give me absolute license to operate, to give me feedback on how I'm doing, and to push me and inspire me. It was a really, really successful combination. One of the things that we did together was completely restructure what was an organisation in some distress that put clinical directors right at the heart of it. So your clinical directors didn't just have your usual job like they do sometimes in acute trusts, which is the orthopaedic surgeon that shouts loudest. The clinical directors that we appointed were responsible for performance, quality, workforce, and the money, and we gave them management teams to support them. I'm a big fan of single points of accountability. It was difficult to get people into those jobs to start with. When we got a couple of successes, they became hugely popular, and it's real strength to that organisation. They're extremely bright. They bring a huge wealth of experience, and frankly, if you want your consultant body to do anything, my experience is it needs that kind of figure. So after a few years of really good stuff in that organisation, Maria and I were just reflecting, and one of the reflections really was that I started with high standards. Absolutely make sure that when you do that you stick with them as well. So here are a couple of examples. CQC told us that we had the worst accommodation in London, and we agreed with them. So very pleased to say that St Anne's Hospital is now being rebuilt after sold some land to the GLA. That accommodation became, for the people who worked in it, disabling but accepted. And frankly, it's not good enough. So sticking with that principle of it's not good enough, people deserve good quality accommodation is a bit of a lesson, but do not lose the standards that you came with. So when you're horrified when you see something be horrified a year later as you were in the first week. We had a few years together, and Maria went off to become Chief Executive of North Middlesex Hospital, and I became Interim Chief Executive. I did that for about 9 months and delivered absolutely everything that the board asked me to. We did some really good things, became a lead provider in a new care model. I hit our financial targets, sold the St Anne's Hospital all over that period. So on reflection, and I didn't get the job, then what did I learn? So one of the things that I had done as an ops director was to get my head down, run the organisation, and that went really well. I didn't spend as much time outside of it as I should have done. I didn't do enough of the politicking with local MPs. I did some work with the STP, but I should have been more present to be the next chief executive of that organisation. But you get to meet some famous people along the way. So Dan, I'm hoping you've got the slide that's got the 4 characters. I'm the one at the front. To the left is Dr. Vasey. Dr. Vasey is a fantastic clinical director appointed, and then there's my chairman, and then of course there's the Secretary of State for Health, who you might recognise from back then. We got a call from Jeremy's office asking if he could come and meet staff and deliver a presentation on patient safety. And I thought, yeah, let's do it. I found out the reason we had it is because 2 other organisations had turned them down first. So I had a good chat with my fellow chief executives at that time about that. So one of the things that Jeremy and I have got in common is you do the leadership race, you go for the big job, you don't get it. So I'm absolutely with him. Head for the back benches as soon as possible and take time to reflect. And on the last slide, Dan, so just some lessons along the way. One of the things that is really hard, I think, is to remember that you are a talented individual. You're all doing really important work. You wouldn't be doing it if you weren't capable of doing it. So remember all the things that you've learned along the way, and absolutely you're there. Your skills are absolutely transferable. One of the things that I've enjoyed most is going into new organisations, new environments, and that does range from C-Wing, a Pentonville prison, to a mental health ward, to an acute hospital. They're absolutely skills that are transferable, particularly from some of those acute hospital jobs, but not only those. Every job has its stresses. So it's a pretty tough place to work, particularly at the moment. Be resilient, recognise your limits. One of the things that I learned over the last few years in particular that helped me do that was to know my own values and be authentic in what I did. And enjoy it. It's a privilege to work in the NHS. And I thank you for listening and joining me. I hope that was a little bit of entertainment along the way too.